Ladies and gentlemen, Fourth and Trollers, welcome back to Fourth and Troll Fantasy, the most entertaining fantasy football podcast on the planet. My name is Noah Selby.
And I'm Wes Selby.
And we have probably the most special episode of Fourth and Troll Fantasy in existence on our hands today. This beautiful Friday morning, you're tuning in with us. One of the first things I want y'all to hear from Fourth and Troll Fantasy is happy birthday to the one, the only, Wes Selby. Wes, happy birthday. It is your birthday today. When we started this podcast and had the idea a couple of years ago, it always was something we talked about, and now we're finally doing it. And I couldn't be more excited to be doing it with anybody but you, man. And so happy birthday. Very excited to celebrate with a great episode today. I mean, Wes, you're turning, 26. You are 26 today. How do you feel? Do you feel, run me through the emotions?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. That's all very, very sweet. I was thinking about it. I don't feel like a kid anymore, but I don't feel old. So like 25 still feels very, very youthful to me. 26, I kind of feel like, yeah, I think there's no more reason to say I'm not a grown up. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I'm actually like, yeah, I am. I'm the late 20s now. Not really, but in the math, six is closer to 30
later,
than it is to 20.
Rounding.
So yeah, I'm
the maths here.
Them's the maths, baby.
Them's
all
the
right,
maths, baby. He's in his late 20s.
So, but I feel good. I feel like I've had a really good year. It's nice that on this calendar year to be 26, and I get to enjoy the Dolphins continue to do well as my favorite team. I get to continue to record Fourth and Troll, and I get to spend it with you Fourth and Trollers. So thank you for sticking around into November. So this is great. I'm excited to be doing this for my birthday. Noah, how are you?
100%, man. I'm doing good. I'm excited to be here with you on this day, even though we are many, many miles apart, separated by some state lines. But I'm excited, man. I'm excited for this episode. I echo everything you've said about, getting to spend time with the trollers and just having a good time. And we're all grateful for you and your insight you provide and the laughs you bring. And
shucks.
And so, yeah, I mean, we served you up a nice birthday gift from Thursday night.
Oh, thank you. That was you?
Who knows? I don't know. You wanted to see Marcus Mariota make some of the stupidest plays of his entire life, right? That was on your birthday list?
Yeah, it brought me joy. It was one of the very first things I wanted. It's like, how can I start out this 26th year in life? I know. I'd like to watch Marcus Mariota get sacked maybe like 6 times in the rain and nothing else happen offensively really for either team except for D'Onta Foreman. Loving it. Off to a fantastic start for 26.
What a thrilling game. Yeah, what a thrilling game. Yeah, great times. Like I said, it's a very special episode, Wes. Not only is it your birthday, it is Veterans Day, November 11th. It is Veterans Day. We want to say we are grateful and thankful for all the veterans, anyone who has served, who may be listening. We are so grateful and thankful. We do have a great show in store today. We're going to talk about a little bit of Thursday Night Football action, if we want to call it action. And then we're approaching some trade deadlines in fantasy. So we're going to do some buy low, sell high. And then obviously always we're going to do some studs and duds. But first things first, as always, Wes, run us down the news we need to know before we get week 10 in bulk.
It finally happened in Las Vegas. Darren Waller has been officially placed on IR, which is like the second IR really for him this season because he's already missed multiple weeks. He hasn't played a snap since week 5. And if I remember it correctly, I think he played 6 snaps against the Chiefs and then hasn't touched the field since. So honestly, I'll be the first to say, I don't blame you if you drop him. I've already seen people drop him. I know he's a high-profile player, but it's been yet another frustrating season for a player ruined by an injury. And to make it worse for Vegas, Hunter Renfrow is also on IR. So that makes Matt Collins the next best target behind Devontae Adams. Good luck over there, Raiders. Alvin Kamara, speaking of Las Vegas, Alvin Kamara's Pro Bowl incident, which was in Las Vegas, the court date has been postponed to January. So all of you that decided to draft him, you don't have to worry about that being an effect in your fantasy football season, and especially in the playoffs. That is now no longer part of the 2022 season. Ezekiel Elliott did not practice for a few days this week, but has rehabilitated his right knee and with a brace on it as well. He intends to play this Sunday against Green Bay. Right now, it's still not certain, but obviously Tony Pollard doing what he did a couple weeks ago would be a fantastic start if he was the lone back there. Jonathan Taylor has also returned to practice. He's had multiple practices of full, so he should be ready to go on Sunday. Deion Jackson would be the backup if anything were to happen based on his injury too, but Jonathan Taylor should be good to go this week. Also with running backs, Ravens head coach John Harbaugh said that Gus Edwards should return after the Ravens bye week, which is this week. So in week 11, Gus Edwards should play. I've already seen people drop Kenyon Drake, which is an interesting thing. That's how much that Noah and I were talking about the RB1 for the Ravens did really well on Monday night. I think that's going to be a similar situation. So hang tight for Gus Edwards if you have him stashed in your IR slot. In New York, Kenny Golladay. Oh, remember him? He was almost cut before the season started. Well, he returned to practice for the first time since week 4. This is now moderately significant now that Kadarius Toney was traded to the Chiefs. So if you still want some kind of wide receiver 1 on a team, Kadarius Toney technically is the wide receiver 1 there in the depth chart. Titans rookie wide receiver Treylon Burks, yeah, I forgot about him too, is coming off of IR. Their passing game in Tennessee has been pretty much non-existent. So we'll have to see if he makes any kind of impact with his return. If you would like to take someone that was taken in the first round from Tennessee to essentially replace A.J. Brown. So remember Mecole Hardman, my waiver wire out of the week? Well, he has some abdominal pain now after the Sunday night game and missed practice on Wednesday. Right now, status is unknown. Just something to keep a tab on if you did snag him off the waiver wire. Good old Matthew Stafford, Super Bowl champion Matthew Stafford, entered concussion protocol on Tuesday. Heard it was Wednesday, but it was Tuesday specifically. His status right now seems to be in question after missing 2 straight days of practice. And the Rams have stated that if Stafford were to miss time, they're going to slot in quarterback named John Wolford if Stafford misses this game. Which is dumb, in my opinion, because I don't know if you guys watched Bryce Perkins play in preseason. He balled out, dude. Dual threat, mobile quarterback, whatever. Ram seasons is kind of in shambles. Forget about it. Who cares? Matthew Stafford may not play. That's the point. All right. Deebo Samuel returned to practice in full. Should be good to go. Get back with hopefully a Wildcat formation. That's all I'm asking for in San Francisco. Wildcat, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. Ooh. Big oof. I look forward to that. Kyler Murray, same division, NFC West. Kyler Murray showed up on the injury report with a hamstring injury that is now considered day-to-day. Doesn't appear to be serious, but it does put his status for Week 10 against the Rams at risk. Keep that in mind. Last but not least, biggest news of the week, Josh Allen is considered day-to-day with his UCL injury. The current result indicates that it isn't a long-term issue. Some people have thrown around the term Tommy John injury, which is like a 7 to 11 month surgery rehabilitation. It's not that right now. It's only making his game time decision for the Vikings questionable. It is wise, though, we'll say, to have a backup quarterback just in case Josh Allen does not play, because they have a Super Bowl run they're trying to make. They may just sit him out just to be safe. Get a backup ready for your roster. Be on the lookout for Josh Allen's status as well, because later today, we might find out whether or not Josh Allen plays. That's it. That'll do it for the news today on Friday. Now, Noah, let's talk about a game that happened. I'll just call it a game. I won't even call it really like a big Thursday night showdown or any kind of attacking. It was nothing like the rematch we expected between the Falcons and the Panthers. So let's just jump into this, man.
Yeah, I mean, we had a thrilling game 2 weeks ago from these two teams. Overtime, Hail Marys, missed field goals to win games. Excuse me. And then tonight or last night for Thursday Night Football was just really disappointing. It was a disappointment all around in fantasy and in a way for the just entertainment aspect of football. It was not entertaining. It was just, I get it. In Charlotte, they're dealing with some weather coming off of a tropical storm that was going through Florida, I believe. So they were dealing with some weather, some high winds, some slick fields, but just disappointing pretty much all around, with the exception of a couple players. A couple of our must starts were pretty disappointing. DJ Moore. Wes, you marked your words, more than 19 points. Now listen, I will defend our honor on both of these, because had the weather not been as garbage as it was, this might be a different story. But DJ Moore, 6 targets, 4 catches for 29 yards. He had 6.9 fantasy points. Guys, 6 targets was over 30. He had over a 33% target share on six targets. PJ Walker threw 16 passes. It's a bit disappointing for that to have, played out the way that it did. And so in the same vein there, Cordarrell Patterson really was a big letdown. Just 3 fantasy points, just 5 carries for 18 yards, 1 target, 1 catch for a 2-yard gain. The Atlanta rushing game really struggled to get going. Cordarrell Patterson, disappointing to see 5 targets. Their leading, the leading rusher in terms of carries was Tyler Algier, and he only had 8 carries. They really were struggling to figure out what was going on here. This was a 5-headed committee, essentially, between Cordarrell Patterson, Tyler Algier, Avery Williams, Caleb Huntley, and Marcus Mariota. Like, all 5 of these guys ran the ball. And so, it's disappointing. I was a little worried when I saw what the weather was going to be like, because, Cordarrell Patterson coming back from injury, slick field, short week. They don't want him to re-aggravate that injury. Regardless, we were all hoping for all of us were hoping for a little more here, and from Cordarrell Patterson, and so a bit disappointing there. Must starts.
Let me ask the question then, because that's what our episode title is. Do we still believe that Cordarrell Patterson has returned? Is he truly for real, or is this an actual sign? Basically, fluke for real from last night's game.
No, 100. No, this is fluky. It's he is going to come back and he is going to play. It is not he's going to return to form. Bummer. He's scored 5 touchdowns in 6 games this season. That's it. So I mean, it's a bit disappointing, obviously, but we talked about his little workload, and then we compared it to the top workload of rushers there, and the difference is 3 carries. They're being a little more cautious. They really, they weren't getting much going on the ground. It felt like, in terms of, at least yards per carry, Cordarrell Patterson was better than Tyler Algier in that regard. And so I don't know, just all in all, man, it's just disappointing. I think they were trying to be a little more cautious with Cordarrell Patterson. I'm not worried I'm going to be firing him up next week. Like, I'm not worried about, like, oh man, like, I don't know here. And no, like, he's still the guy. He's out there for pass blocking. He's out there on the field when they need him to be. He has the receiving upside that seems like, maybe multiple people do in the backfield, but not everybody's making do on it. And so, bad game for the Falcons really all around, it felt like, which will lead us into,
I agree with all of that, by the way.
Yeah. Which will lead us into our risky starts here, because while he played terribly, like terribly. Like when I saw the final stat line as far as fantasy points went for Marcus Mariota, I could not believe he managed to score 17.74 fantasy points on Thursday Night Football. I could not believe it. So many times during this game, I was yelling at my television saying, can we get Desmond Ridder out there? Like at what point do they put this guy in?
Yeah, I wonder how soon after last night's game.
Mariota looked terrible. The decision-making was awful. Yeah, the decision-making was awful. He looked terrible. The decisions he was making looked like it was a rookie, like in their first game. He was just like chucking balls down the field, and like had it not been so slick and rainy, like the Panthers defense might have finished with like 50 points off of interceptions. Like it was just like what are we doing here?
There were a lot of dropped interceptions from the Panthers. I mean, they still walked away with like 12 or 13 points for defense for fantasy, but they could have had like 17 points themselves with all the dropped picks. Yeah. Mariota had a rough game, man.
I think we see Desmond Ridder very soon because this team just looks very, very bad. Someone who doesn't look very bad though, and who we're both very happy got back on track here, Wes, is D'Onta Foreman. 19 fantasy points, 31 carries for 130 yards and a touchdown. If we were worried that Chuba Hubbard was going to eat back into that, or Raheem Blackshear was going to eat into that a little bit, nope, we're all good there. No worries. I mean, like I said, the Panthers only threw the football 16 times in this game, and they had, I think, nearly 10 more minutes of time of possession than the Falcons did in this game. And so, the Panthers were committed to running the football. They said, we saw what happened to us last week. Let's do something like that, but on the other side for our offense. And so they were committed to just running the football as much as possible. But great to see D'Onta Foreman get back on track like we thought he would. We really wanted to instill that confidence on Tuesday. Hey, make sure you plug him in. He it's risky because he had a bad game, but he will pay off for you here. And he looked great. He had some explosive plays. He was durable. Like, as we've seen, 31 carries, really, really looked awesome. Third 100-yard game that he's had out of 4 starts. This dude's gearing up to be a really, really solid, like high-end RB2 for the rest of the season.
He could be a league saver for a lot of people that ended up getting him on the waiver when CMC was traded. Like he could very well have saved people's playoff runs with this. And the amazing thing is, once again, this is all in the ground. These are Derrick Henry stats. No wonder he was Derrick Henry's backup. 1 target. No catches. All 19 of these points are on the ground. That's, to me, is even more impressive. He's crushing it over there.
Yeah, he definitely is. It's good to see. Our don't starts here, Wes. Kyle Pitts, 4.8 points. Well, there you go. It is interesting to see the target share getting is consistently high for him. 8 targets. Maybe when you don't have a freaking idiot throwing the ball to you, like, you'll produce more in fantasy. God, like, seriously, I hope Desmond Ridder plays for them very soon, because he looks.
I love how much you are invested now in the quarterback room with the Falcons.
I saw, watching Ridder in the preseason, I truly thought Ridder has a chance to win this job. And the Falcons are bad with Marcus Mariota.
They're bad.
Like, we're just seeing that. And so, excuse me. I hope he gets a chance here soon. But Kyle Pitts, 4.8 points. Hope you left him on the bench. And then Drake London, 14.8 points, has a little bit of resurgence here. As a Drake London fan, I'm happy. As fantasy football analysts, as we are, Wes, I'm disappointed because this felt like it shouldn't have happened. It definitely felt like it should have been like they're on like the 8-yard line or something like that. It felt like it should have been, as much as the Falcons were committed to running the ball, felt like it should have been Cordarrell Patterson or Tyler Algier or something like that, or Marcus Mariota running the football in, or something along those lines. But
I think that if you ended up slotting him in, you're content, almost 15 points. That feels like you can get by after Thursday night. But
I'm sure you're thrilled if you were in a position where you had to start Drake London.
If you had
if you were in a position where you had to start him and you were like, please come on. Like, I'm sure you're thrilled, but it's just, I'm not counting on this.
I still feel this is fluke.
It's definitely fluke. It's
3 catches or 5 catches, 38 yards. I don't see the volume. So again, it's one of those, hey, he got the touchdown kind of performance. I mean, he should be more involved, but he hasn't been for a while. So maybe this is an uptick in his production going forward. I personally don't see it that way, just because, I mean, sure, 6 targets, but I mean, there are other guys on here that I thought did, for the Falcons that played better than Drake London. They just didn't get the touchdowns. Nobody really got more than 10 points for all the Falcons players, but I don't know. That's my case. I think it's a fluke.
Yep. It's a fluke. This whole game is honestly, we've been through a lot of Thursday night football games this season. This might have been the worst one. Truly. Like, this might have been the worst one. It was fun to watch D'Onta Foreman do well. Besides that, it was just like, I really
don't know. It's hard to say this worse than the Colts Broncos, man.
Yeah, but that was almost comical how bad this was.
I guess it was memorable.
This Thursday night football game was just like, wow. It was comical because it's like, those are 2 pretty good teams. Like Broncos, Colts, pretty good teams. Wow, I cannot believe they're doing this bad. This one was just like, wow, we know this is gonna suck. And wow, how is this sucking more than I thought it was going to suck? Because this is terrible. I was very ready to get past that game. But I mean, I'll be honest, Wes, anyone else you want to talk about? Anyone else of note? I don't think anyone was worth like really mentioning here. We kind of talked about Tyler Algier in the backfield a little bit. I mean, is there anybody else you want to bring up here?
I'll make 2 points. One, because he probably won't make our hyped up segment. Congrats to Eddie Pinheiro for scoring 16 fantasy points as a kicker for the Panthers. Just a quick shout out to that, because that's nuts. But I will say that with D'Onta Foreman, I think we can lock in D'Onta Foreman without any doubt as the clear RB1. And I think, unless you think otherwise, I think you can drop Chuba Hubbard. I think we can just move on. We know it's D'Onta Foreman. Don't hang on to Hubbard as the handcuff to what was once the handcuff of the Panthers running back room. Just move on. Go get someone else. Go find another wide receiver or tight end, or maybe some other kind of running back that might be free. It's D'Onta Foreman's backfield. Chuba Hubbard no longer involved in the Carolina Panthers running back committee.
Yep. Agree. Let's move on from Thursday Night Football, though, Wes, because as we talked about a little bit, trade deadlines are coming up here in fantasy football. We're going to do a little bit of sell high and buy low. We're going to start out with buy low here, Wes. Who are we buying low?
Well, you know who I forgot about, and I think that's the reason I'm interested in buying him, is DeAndre Swift. I feel like he has just kind of been forgotten since his injury this season. He was a late 2nd round, early 3rd round draft pick in fantasy this season. He started out really great and then got hurt and missed several weeks. And Jamal Williams that entire time, really this whole season, has been playing great. And so I feel like DeAndre Swift has kind of fallen into this limbo of like a good player that maybe I'll start when he's healthy, but I'm kind of just trucking along without him. Just a reminder, DeAndre Swift is averaging 14.6 points a game. And Dan Campbell did the thing. He did the thing where he says he's going to get this player more involved. And this player is DeAndre Swift. And that's what we talked about last episode in the news segment. Basically, Campbell said, hey, we're just easing him back from this injury. I think DeAndre Swift is a good option to go get in a light trade, because I don't think he is expensive really in any way, unless you're packaging him in addition to a top 5 player. I think you have a really good shot to get DeAndre Swift. Plus, this is a kind of strange running back year, and there's been a lot of injuries, some confusing backfields and also some busts. I think if you just get another player that you know is talented, is very young, has the ability to put up a lot of points, and is playing, it was at one point the number one offense in the NFL, I think DeAndre Swift is someone you should just feel out for some trades, try to get another solid back in your lineup.
Wow. Wes, I hope you're correct in this assessment.
Yeah.
Because I am like so far from wanting to acquire DeAndre Swift on my team because I'm terrified with how this Lions offensive scheme just lets DeAndre Swift get him down the field, just lets DeAndre Swift do some work. And then they get in the red zone and they're like, hey, you know who we like to score touchdowns? Jamal Williams. I so badly want you to be correct here because I really like DeAndre Swift. I had him on my fantasy team last year. Did a lot of good for me. But wow, my concern level still, I know Dan Campbell said we're easing him back in. We need to get him more involved. My concern level is still at an all-time high from when they played the Dolphins, and DeAndre Swift finished the game with 5 carries. And after that game, Dan Campbell said, yeah, I think we gave Swift one too many carries. And I was like, huh? What? Like, what do you mean? You're highly drafted running back, DeAndre Swift. Like, you think 5 carries is too much? I hope he sticks to his word. I hope on everything for your birthday, Wes. I hope you are correct in the assessment that, my goodness, Dan Campbell, Detroit Lions, please use DeAndre Swift more because it has been so sad to watch him just not do anything. And I know he's hurt, and I know you ease people back in, but one too many carries on 5 carries, Danny Campbell. What are we doing here? I hope you're right, Wes. With everything in me, I hope you're correct. But I know one thing you are correct on is he's not going to be expensive if you're trying to go get him.
Exactly. So everything you just said is what the owners are thinking. And I think you could just send a wide receiver. Then you just send a wide receiver, and DeAndre Swift could even just stay on your bench, honestly. Just getting the right depth heading into fantasy playoffs. We know DeAndre Swift can be good. So that's my pitch. You can afford to send someone from your bench to get DeAndre Swift, who should be getting double-digit points every game. Should be.
I like it. It's a great pitch. And like I said, I hope you are correct. Danny Campbell, please do the right thing.
Danny Campbell, dude, what a guy. Dan Campbell is awesome.
I love Dan Campbell. Yeah,
he's fantastic. All right, Noah, sell me on your buy low.
Good one.
Thanks, bro.
Good one.
I'm 26.
Yeah, here you go. Ready? Yeah, you're 26 years old. That was good. Here's what I'm gonna say. Ready? Volume over everything for me. All right. Buy low on Chris Godwin right now. Buy low on Chris Godwin, wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Listen, Godwin was hurt in the offseason, came back, had a great comeback, got hurt in week 1, came back 2 weeks later. Since then, Chris Godwin has had 10 plus targets in all but 1 game since returning from injury. But he still has not broken the 15.5 fantasy point mark this season. That's absurd to me, to have so many targets and not have broken 15.5 fantasy points. It's a little bit wild. We know the Bucs throw the football a lot, but here's where I'm at. Ready? Coming off of a win for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And crazy as it sounds, there could be a momentum shift. Winning helps in that regard. So there could be a momentum shift and a little bit of spark on the offense. We all saw Brady come to the podium after the game and just say that was freaking awesome and not say freaking. So he's excited, There could be a little momentum swing, boosted confidence here, but all in all, defining characteristics and factors here. Here's what I'm going to bet on. I'm going to bet that the offense becomes a little bit better. The offense becomes a little bit more efficient in the second half of the season with a little bit of a momentum swing here. And I'm going to bet that Chris Godwin finds his way into the end zone a couple of times over the second half of this season, which is something he has yet to do this whole season, leading to the 15.5 fantasy points not being surpassed. I'm going to bet on those two things, and that's why I'm going to say you should buy Chris Godwin now, because while he has been solid, and maybe people are going to look deeper at the numbers, if somebody's just going, yeah, I mean, he's been good, but he hasn't scored. He hasn't, really broken out. He's riding around 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 points. They might want something more there. You might be able to sell somebody in a similar range that they just like more, but I'm going to bet on a little bit of shift here from the Buccaneers on the offensive side of the football. And I think Chris Godwin's somebody you need to get on your roster leading into the second half of this fantasy season and into the fantasy playoffs.
I wondered the same thing when Brady walked on that podium and said, that was awesome. You made a jab at it. Last episode was like, no, it wasn't. You barely saved your fantasy game, you punk. Yeah. But in the real world, which you rarely talk about here, this is a fantasy podcast. Yeah. But in the real world, I have the same thought of like, okay, I wonder now. They finally won, broke like a 3-game losing streak. It's been rough. Obviously, Brady's personal life has been weighing a lot. It's basically in the past now, as far as like the legal stuff, paperwork, all that. And now they won. I wonder the same thing. And I feel like that there is an opportunity to try and go wrangle up some of these other Bucs players that are affordable. I don't know if Leonard Fournette is exactly affordable right now, but Chris Godwin is definitely. And as much as Brady likes Mike Evans, he really likes Chris Godwin. I don't think people realize how much he likes Chris Godwin. I would even sometimes believe he likes him more than Mike Evans. The target volume last season was phenomenal for Godwin. I like it. If you are in need of a wide receiver, that is a fantastic choice. Good one, Noah.
Thanks, Wes. I appreciate that. Tell me who you're going to go ahead and sell high, Wes.
Buccaneers wide receiver Mike Evans.
Bingo!
So I don't think it's a complete shift. I'm not saying it is a nice segue, but I don't believe this is a full. It's Chris Godwin's show now, and Mike Evans is taking a back seat. But Mike Evans has been the only reliable player in that Buccaneers offense as far as fantasy goes, and we've seen him make uncharacteristically bad decisions in the football field. He's had some drop passes. He has not made some of the first downs and stretch for the field the way that we know him to be. So he's not playing at the highest level, but he's still good. And I'm not saying you have to sell him now or you're going to be stuck with a bad player. No, I think he's good. But I think Mike Evans has the capital for you to get someone great. If you want to package him, you could go get someone that's in the top 10 for a position of running back or a different wide receiver. Mike Evans still has a lot of value right now. And again, I think if you held on to him, you'd be okay. But I think Mike Evans has enough going in his direction with the targets. People are going to look at the stats. When you offer a player, they're going to say, well, how does he really do? They're going to see this dude has a lot of double-digit games despite how poorly the Buccaneers have been playing. He has 9 points from last week, but he had 11 targets and 11 targets the week before and 18 points then and 18 points then. And he's had a really good, successful fantasy season, also averaging over 14 points a game. So with all that being said, Mike Evans, I think, has the opportunity for you to get that last piece in your fantasy football playoff push. Sell Mike Evans while you can, because I also think Noah's a little bit right. I think Chris Godwin's going to end up stealing a couple of touchdowns, and Fournette is probably going to get back in the game a little bit more. Maybe Rachaad White is going to start playing more in the role. Who knows? That's my pitch. Mike Evans has enough capital for you to get the missing piece in your fantasy team.
I agree. I echo everything you just said, Wes, and to add one piece here. The Bucs had a great game-winning drive, last second to win the game. Brady drove them down the field. 60 yards, something like that, something along those lines. Mike Evans has been Brady's go-to touchdown guy, right? So he scored that game-winning touchdown, right? No. The first tight end touchdown reception for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers happened this past week. Cade Otton scored the game-winning touchdown for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Brady loves his tight ends, his toy ends.
Toy ends.
We saw with Gronk, and he's been finding a little bit of rapport with Cade Otton. I think you're onto something here. I think we're going to see less touchdowns in the second half of the season from Mike Evans. I think you can definitely piece him with somebody to go get, you've got a lesser running back or something along those lines, and maybe you've got I don't know, I'm trying to think of somebody here. Maybe you're in a good running back situation and you drafted well, and you've got Dameon Pierce as your third running back, and you are really hoping to upgrade because you took James Conner as your second running back. Well, maybe, just maybe here, you could send Dameon Pierce and Mike Evans and maybe get a guy like Saquon Barkley or something along those lines.
Or Kamara too. Yeah.
Or Kamara, something like that. Yeah, a package like that, somebody that can definitely be a difference maker for you there. I like it. I really am bought in on this. I sold Mike Evans earlier in the season. If I still had shares of him, I would still be looking to sell him right now. I think he's a good sell option.
You're a great wingman. You're a great wingman, because that was something that I forgot to mention, but it did stand out to me when I watched that game live against the Bucs against the Rams. It was like Otton was the first read. That was the play design. Yeah. And sure, it's a good play design when you're on like the 1 or 2 yard line, but
sure. Gosh, we saw the Cowboys week 1. Yeah, we saw just all right, fade out to Evans on the 1 yard line too. So it's like, we
always been the
go-to else here. Yeah,
it was always the fade route, just rainbow. Evans will find a way to bring it down or call or draw PI. But yeah. Anyway, package Evans with someone pretty good as well. Go get your league-winning player.
Do it.
That's it. That's all I got to say.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. You're
all right. Noah, it's about time we hear who you're going to sell while they're hot. Who is it?
You need to sell Joe Mixon right now. Listen, the man just etched his name into history books. 55.1 fantasy points in a single game. Absolutely historic, record-breaking. Sell him now. His value has never been higher. Listen, I'm going to throw some perspective onto this because I know you Mixon owners are like, we got the game. He's finally here. He's arrived. Has he? I don't think he has. Listen, I am not downplaying this game from him. It was unbelievable. He had everyone's jaws on the floor. But that game got him to RB2 on the season at this point. Of the 4 other running backs inside the top 5, Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, and Nick Chubb, they have a total between the 4 of them of 5 games combined scoring less than 13 fantasy points. Between the 4 of them, they have 5 finishes of less than 13 fantasy points. Joe Mixon has 4 such games by himself. 4 games of 13 fantasy points or less. Nearly half of Joe Mixon's games this season have been games of 12.9 fantasy points or less. Now, let's look at those same running backs in regards to games of 20-plus point weeks. Austin Eckler and Derrick Henry each have 5 games each with 20-plus fantasy points. Nick Chubb and Christian McCaffrey have 4 games each with 20-plus fantasy points. Joe Mixon only has 2. Joe Mixon only has 2 games of 20 or more fantasy points. It was week 1, and it was his explosion last week for 55. If Mixon hadn't scored his 55-point game and just had continued to put up what he had been averaging before last week, which was 14.6 fantasy points, he'd currently be the RB10 and have just put up his 8th straight week of 18.1 fantasy points or less in a single game. Listen, Ramondre Stevenson and Joe Mixon are both averaging 19.8 fantasy points per game over the last 7 weeks. One of those guys just had a 55-point boom, and one of them didn't. I think you get the picture here. Joe Mixon's value has never been higher, and you could go out and potentially get a guy like Ramondre Stevenson plus another piece, or someone maybe like Alvin Kamara plus another piece, just by capitalizing on selling Joe Mixon after he did what only 7 other fantasy football players in history have done. You have to go sell Joe Mixon right now. You need to get value out of this guy who has not been reflective of an RB2 season throughout the season this year. You got to sell Joe Mixon.
Why would you say something so controversial yet so brave? Dude.
Thank you, Wes. Well,
hell yeah, brother. Okay. A few thoughts.
Yeah.
Just for context. So Noah and I, we always give each other our players when we're doing segments like this. We never give each other the reason. So it really is, I'm sitting back here just listening, taking this all in. Okay, first of all, this is like 101 stocks. Like you like at the highest point you sell and you get as much money and as much capital back. I love that already. The fact is fantastic in your pitch to sell Joe Mixon, because you could probably get any single player in the NFL. I guarantee you could get Tyreek Hill just with Joe Mixon after that one game. You might have to work a little bit with someone else, but like, honestly, like, would you disagree? I think someone could see a 55-point game and be like, yes, I need that every week. And they fall for it. I think that's one, just that alone is fantastic. Even if Joe Mixon is really great going forward, the amount of solidified 2022 talent that you get in return is going to increase your entire depth chart, not just your running back, that's Joe Mixon, but the running back and a wide receiver. And now you have more firepower. I love it. Number 2, Joe Mixon hasn't been good this year. And I think that's very important to remind people that he has kind of been somewhat of a disappointment. And as much as we get enamored with the 55-point performance, that is such a helpful reminder to know that he's not back. This was a fluke game. I think he's obviously a good football player, but like, as far as fantasy, this is not how he has been. He's not been working towards this game. This is just one of those random games where someone just gets all the touchdowns. Noah. I love it.
Thanks, Wes. I appreciate it. I was very excited doing all that research. I was like, wow, yeah. Because I had seen some people earlier in the week saying you need to sell Joe Mixon. And I was like, no, you don't. And then I went and looked at it and I was like, oh, yeah, you do. I was like, that's so.
Can I put you in my hyped up segment for next week?
For that sell?
Yeah.
Go for it. Yeah, I like it, Wes. Yeah, let's do
it. Week 10, hyped up Noah.
I like it. I like
selling
it.
Joe Mixon.
Joe Mixon sell track.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Incredible.
I like it there. Yeah. Listen, we hope that helps you guys with some information there for your buy lows and sell highs. If you've got your trade deadlines coming up, definitely keep some of those things in mind. To close out the show, Wes, we're going to do studs and duds for week 10. Who is your week 10 stud, Wes?
Oh, the Raiders defense is my stud. They're playing the Colts, okay? And as much as we know the Raiders this season have just crapped the bed in the second half of like every game this season, dude, the Colts, I don't know what they're thinking right now. I don't know how they expect to do anything with a coach. Look, I love Jeff Saturday as much as the next Peyton Manning fan, but Jeff Saturday is not a head coach, okay? He was not on the staff. He was a consultant. He was a consultant for the Colts. He doesn't know what he's going to be doing, okay? He has no idea. Their offensive coordinator, which, by the way, Frank Reich was their play caller. Their new play caller is 30 years old, who has never called plays before in his life. What are they going to do on offense when Jonathan Taylor has been a bust? As I said in that same segment when he was a bust, they have the 26th worst offensive line in the NFL, and Sam Hellbringer Ellinger is definitely not the future, at least for this season. What could they possibly do on offense? If you are someone who streams defenses, go get the Raiders defense. I mean, the defense is usually like a 10-point, give or take, maybe like 8 points, maybe a good game like the Panthers last night with 13 points. Ghost, I'm buying in on, I'm taking advantage of this disaster show that's going to happen with the coaching staff and the Colts. They have 5 days to prepare all of this with people that have never been in that room. I picked up the Raiders defense. I'm buying in on this. This is going to be a disaster. I look forward to it. I'm watching every minute of this Raiders Colts game, dude.
I love it. I love it so much. We said and kind of laughed and joked about it last week, but we said, hey, maybe the new thing is just to you stream whoever the Colts are playing. It truly might be, because
yes,
now that Frank Reich is out and Jeff Saturday, and I saw a really funny tweet that was like, you know what? When we saw that Colts game, I think we all expected them to do something, a little bit crazy and hire their former center as their head coach. Like, what are we doing here? But I'm with you, Wes. I think in a mostly streaming defense, fantasy world that we live in right now, the Raiders are probably the top option this week, and it ain't no doubt about it. I like it.
Yeah, I think they're projected like 7 points. But even still, I'm taking full advantage of this complete disorganization in this organization. I hope they get, I don't even know how many points they get. It's just going to be disaster. All right, Noah, who's your stud for this week?
It's going to be great. My stud is wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, George Pickens, going up against the New Orleans Saints. Just a 10.1 fantasy point projection. Pickens is in a prime position here for a second half of the year breakout. Over the last 4 weeks, when the Steelers were involving Chase Claypool more and more in order to kind of boost some trade value, which they definitely did because they got a second round pick for him. My goodness. George Pickens was receiving just a 13.8% target share. With Claypool gone, Pickens has a direct line to what I am going to predict to be at least 7 targets a game here, with the upside for double digits, given that Kenny Pickett has had at least 38 pass attempts in 3 of his 4 starts. He only had 20 pass attempts in that game against the Bucs because they weren't risking throwing the ball. They had the lead and they wanted to win, so they kept running it. They were keeping the ball on the ground. He wasn't throwing it a whole lot there. Listen, 10.1 fantasy points is a mark that Pickens has surpassed 3 times over his 5 weeks of action with Kenny Pickett. I like Pickens a lot this week against the Saints defense, who's got a pretty depleted secondary right now. They don't have C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Obviously, he is on the Eagles. Marshawn Lattimore has been out of games for a while here. I think Pickens is primed for a really solid game against the Saints with a 10.1 point projection. How could he not be a stud for this guy this week?
I like the PPR volume of George Pickens without Chase Claypool. And especially, I mean, if you're not in a PPR league, it's not going to be quite as enticing, but I think this is where we end up. But when preseason happened and we saw that George Pickens catch, Noah and I were like, who cares? He's like wide receiver.
Yeah, we literally
4.
were like, he's like 5th in line for targets. This guy's going to be Jack. And now I'm like, put him in your lineup.
Now he's wide receiver 2 in this depth chart. I like it. I like where it's going. I know that the Steelers also like him a lot. I mean, there's a debate that, Noah, you're on the side between if George Pickens' catch was better than OBJ's catch. You like Pickens' catch better.
I stand by it. Yeah.
We know he's got the talent and the athleticism to be a huge difference maker in this offense that has been SPDB. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope you're right, because I would really like to see George Pickens make a stand here and say, like, yeah, this preseason catch I did and this other Monday night catch, or whatever it was, Thursday night, that wasn't just me making some lucky play. No, this is me. Here I am, rock you like a hurricane. I like it. If I had him, I'd start him just for fun. I mean, they're coming off a bye week too.
Yeah,
I like all of it.
A lot of time to prepare with this guy being the wide
receiver. You're
doing
great this episode.
Put me back in that hyped up segment, baby. I'm 2 for 2. Let's go. Let's go.
You in there twice.
Let's jump over to Duds, who is just letting us down and just dudding out for week 10.
Yeah. Okay. I got some numbers to read here.
Okay.
Because
tell me.
The Bills defense, I think, is going to be a dud. Now, here's the thing. They're projected right now at 5 points. I'm going to tell you why I think that will happen. Because we think of the Bills defense as like this guaranteed 10 point, 11 point, even 12 point plus kind of defense. Set it and forget it. Well, there's been a trend downward for the Bills, and they're playing the Vikings, who have been trending upward as far as fantasy points. Okay. So Kirk Cousins of the first 4 games, averaging a little more than 14.5 points per game. Last 4 weeks, he's almost averaging 20 points per game. Okay. The first few weeks, he had about 4 interceptions. Okay. Since week 2, he's only thrown 2 total interceptions, and he has 3 straight games with 2 touchdowns. Okay. Dalvin Cook, first 4 games, averaging about 11 points a game. Last 4 games, averaging 20 points a game. You go into specifics. First 4 games, averaging 69 yards a game. Last 4 games, averaging 82 yards a game. They're both increasing. He's scored 4 of his 5 total touchdowns in the last 4 games. He's increased in carries and in targets. He has back-to-back games with 6 targets. He's also increasing in the passing game, okay? Kirk Cousins is doing better. Dalvin Cook is doing better. Justin Jefferson, I don't need to say much about him because he's amazing, but even he is seeing more yards per game from the first 4 games to these last 4 games, from 98 yards per game. Yes, that includes his 180-something yard game in week 1 against the Packers. 98 yards per game, now 118 yards per game. Okay, that's how the Vikings offense has been doing, trending upward. Not to mention they just acquired TJ Hawkinson. The Bills defense, here's the thing. First 4 games only allowed 173 passing yards per game. These last 4 games, they've now averaged a total of 255 yards passing. Remember, those first 4 games included Tua Tagovailoa and Lamar Jackson. These last 4 games include Zach Wilson and Kenny Pickett. How are they allowing more yards? I don't know, but that's just the fact. Okay, rushing yards. The first 4 games, only 57 yards per game in the first 4. These last 4, over 100 yards, 106 yards per game. Same with receivers, which makes sense that the passing game increases, but it's 127 yards first 4. Now it's 158. Same with tight ends. Tight end yards are increasing as well. Even sacks. Their sacks have decreased. They had more sacks per game in the first 4 than these last 4, even with interceptions. Everything right now shows that the Bills defense is trending downward and allowing more to happen to them. And the Vikings are doing better. They haven't scored double-digit points in fantasy since week 5 against the Steelers, which was Kenny Pickett's first ever start. Since then, it's been back-to-back 4-point games for these Bills defense. They're projected at 5 points. And I think that's going to happen. They could even have less than that because of how good the Vikings offense is. So this is a word of caution more than it is a complete dud. They're going to tank. I think you really are going to see 5 points from this Bills defense when you start them. I get it. You have to start them in the Bills defense, but just be warned. I think the Bills defense is going to dud in your lineup this week.
Sad. Because I have Bills defense. And
I realized that maybe like a few words into my speech, I was like, oh, Noah has them right.
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
Oh,
listen,
well.
they've been disappointing, but I don't really have a choice. So I want to drop somebody else to roster somebody else, but you already grabbed the Raiders defense.
I sure did.
So listen, I'm gonna write it out. I'm gonna see if maybe the defense is like, you know what? We don't have Josh Allen. We gotta do this, boys. And then they get it back together. I don't know.
Maybe.
You're probably right, Wes, but you know what? I had Cordarrell Patterson in my lineup, and I was already projected to lose by like 14 this week. And you know what? I'm just gonna close my eyes and hope for the best here. But you know what? I'm kind of on the same train with you, though, Wes, because my dad also plays for the Buffalo Bills.
Oh, tell us.
It's Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis is a dud this week against the Minnesota Vikings. He is the definition of boomer bust, you guys. 3 weeks this season with over 16 fantasy points. 4 weeks this season with less than 6 fantasy points. Listen, I'm taking the under. The Vikings are allowing just 12.9 fantasy points to wide receiver 2s on the season. Now, with Josh Allen's status being uncertain, I'm definitely not expecting one of those boom weeks for Gabe Davis. Plain and simple. No flashy numbers for you. I think he should be on benches. He's a dud.
It's hard when you have such a talented boomer bust player like Gabe Davis, but he's also been hurt too, so it's been hard to really monitor how he's doing. I also think that even if Josh Allen plays, I don't see him bombing that 70-yard deep throw that he's known for, because literally that's the nerve that is injured right now.
Yeah.
And that's what Gabe Davis does. I mean, flashback to that week 5 game that, I was just talking about. There it is, 98-yard touchdown. Gabe Davis, second play of the game.
First drive of the game, yeah.
That's what Gabe Davis does. He is the Deshaun Jackson of our league, even though Deshaun Jackson is still somehow playing in the NFL. But he is boomer bust. And I get it. Sometimes you have to ride or die by those players, but I don't think you have to with Gabe Davis anymore because of his injuries and because of Josh Allen's status in the air. Now, by the time you're listening to this, you may already know if Josh Allen is playing or not, because it's supposed to happen sometime later today. But Noah, I cannot think of a more perfectly accurate prediction from everything you've said all episode. This is the greatest birthday of my life.
You know what? I did it for your birthday, man. I did it for your birthday. I'm glad we could put something together for you. It has been awesome to be able to do an episode on your birthday, Wes, but that is going to be all the time we have today. Wherever you're listening, we'd appreciate it if you gave the episode 5 stars and write something funny in the review. Hey, even wish Wes a happy birthday in your review.
Oh,
so we can give you a shout out next time. We're on social media everywhere at 4th and Troll, and on Facebook at 4th and Troll Fantasy. Look for our mascot, Tutty the Troll, and make him smile by giving us a follow and joining us next time every Tuesday and Friday. My name is Noah Selby.
And I'm Wes Selby.
And this has been 4th and Troll Fantasy.